I had a detailed discussion with Colin Bond, the driving standards observer, following the announcement that no action would be taken as a result of the incident between Marcus Ambrose and Mark Skaife down at turns 2 and 3 in race number 1. The bottom line is that in terms of the way the race stewards and the IPO, the driving standards observer, saw this incident, it came down to a question of racing room in their view, and Mark Skaife in their view should have given Marcus Ambrose some racing room as they negotiated turn 3.
Drama for Stephen Ellery's Falcon before leaving pit lane to head to the grid. Most teams go through a warm-up procedure in pit lane. Once 888 had reached the right temperature, they shut the engine off in Stephen Ellery's car, but there must have been some excess fuel in one of the trumpets or a backfire of some kind because it caused a small airbox fire. Initial checks show no damage to the wiring or the airbox. They have sent the 88 car to the grid.
That's not an uncommon thing either, Greg, because yesterday Greg Ritter suffered the same fate, as you may recall, and over the years there's been a few of those. It doesn't take much of a splutter. Remember, these engines are tuned to run producing over 600 horsepower at 7,500 revs or thereabouts most of their life. They often don't run well down low and they spit, and sometimes when they do pop back through those trumpets, it sets fire to the airbox and makes a lot of damage in a very short period of time. These are all the guys that we will ride on board with in this second race, and here's the championship situation so far.
And a big winner, Neil, this guy here, Greg Murphy, was back in 13th place. His result in race 1 has elevated him back up to 7th in the championship. Ambrose edges out a little more over his teammate Russell Ingall. And the other mover in the opposite direction, unfortunately, was Paul Radicic, who went from 6th to 13th. So it can hurt you, but the championship's nice and tight. There's only several points when you get back into 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th like that. So it's nice and tight. Positions can change very easily. So that's just a fairly divisive decision, isn't it? There's going to be a lot of people arguing in lounge rooms around Australia right now.
There's nothing unusual about that. Some other updates. Garth Tander flat spotted a front right tyre, I should say, in the first race. That was the reason why he dropped off in his pace. Russell Ingall, when he put his second set of tyres on, was about 0.6 of a second slower per lap than on his first set. They don't really have an explanation as to why. It could have been a temperature or pressure issue, and that was why he was making decisions that we commented on out there, that it was better just to, for example, let Stephen Richards go, who had a great turn of speed, rather than getting into a battle that you were not going to win. Greg Murphy's pretty happy with his car, made a few tweaks to that. He said the rear tyres went away in the first race a little, but now let's get set for race 2.
Can anyone catch this guy? Ambrose ran away with it in 1. What will he do in 2? Can Lowndes respond? Great start, Ambrose. He launches it, he flies. And look for the second place Lowndes defence from Murphy, because Murphy flew from the grid. Great start for the Super Cheap pilot.
Ambrose gets away so well in that Pertec entry, doesn't he? And I think Todd Kelly made a good start as well.
They fight down into turn 2. Single file, but further back, they're fighting for positions. Look at this. Ellery pushing his way through.
It's that mid-pack that you've got to focus on in the middle of turn 2. There's just no room there, and a pile of cars trying to negotiate it.
Looked like John Bowe got a pretty nifty start at the Team BOC Falcon. He's up to about 8th or 9th. Through comes his teammate as well, Brad Jones, forcing his way.
The nagging misfire that's playing car number 3 there, the Jason Richards Dodo Racing Holden, was still driving them crazy in the first race, and between races they've been working frantically trying to deal with it. And I understand that Steve Ellery has copped a black flag, or will get a black flag, and he'll have to take a drive through for jumping the start.
The Brytec boys, Steve Owen, Matthew White and the Fujitsu Fords, they're fighting it out further back in the field. Good start too, Stephen Johnson and the West Point Ford. Strong starters, they sort themselves out.
Ambrose, good gap on cold tyres. Looks like someone ran wide up the top there at turn 9 out in the grass. Could have been one of the Larkin Motorsport entries, I thought. We'll try and get a confirmation on that. And Paul Wheels limping there on the exit of turn 9. Remember, a stop-go penalty for him in race 1. End of lap 1 of 36. And a problem there for Ellery as he peels off for his jump start. 38.8 standing lap, the fastest standing lap for Ambrose, of course. 39.4 for Lowndes. So 0.6 of a second on that opening lap. It was a great opening lap from Marcus.
Todd Kelly sits in a solid 4th place at the moment. Good weekend for him so far. Here's Steve Ellery, better electrical Ford, cruising through for the drive-through.
Still no sign of concern over that airbox fire, but this is obviously very frustrating for Stephen Ellery. Nerves were high for him before he left pit lane as it was.
Solid 8th place in race 1. That was a good points result for Ellery. Unlikely he will get the same again. Stephen Richards, Russell Ingall fighting over ground. We saw this happen in race 1. Ellery, or rather Ingall, as Neil mentioned, had to yield, let Richards go. And Stephen went on to a fine 3rd place. You reckon Lowndes can go with Ambrose in this one?
Just watching those times, he's done the fastest first sector in this lap. 4-wheel in to replace what I imagine to be some damage to a tyre, maybe change rubber if he's flat spotted. There's another issue there because of the contact that he's made at turn 9. Hasn't been a great day for him.
That'll hurt Paul Wheel as far as the championship position. He was as high as 3rd earlier this year. He's back in 6th at the moment, and he'll drop from the top 10 after this race.
Just going back to your question, Craig's continued that pace that he showed in the first sector. He's quick in the second sector. He's just done the fastest lap of the race so far at a 32.9 and therefore closed the gap. He's right on the back now of Marcus Ambrose.
Here's the order. It's Ambrose, Lowndes, Murphy, Todd Kelly, Stephen Richards, Russell Ingall. Here's the battle at the front, though. These two guys nice and close. Then it's Scaife 7, John Bow 8th, Paul Morris 9, Garth Tander 10.
Marcus, one of the few drivers in the field to hold on to 3rd gear around turn 3 there before he grabs 4th. Some people choose to short shift. They grab 2nd to 3rd quickly and then just pull it straight back into 4th to try and keep the load off the rear tyre. And Marcus is kind of just sliding a bit on the exit there at 5.
Just prior to the start of this race, I grabbed Campbell Little, the man who worked so closely with Craig Lowndes on this 888 car, and asked him what had transpired in that first race. They had great car speed, they could push it and set the pace early on in the first race. But once they changed the tyres after the compulsory pit stop, it was Ambrose who dominated the pace. They made a very small change to this car. Campbell Little said to me, look, it's just fractions, but they reckon they've got some good pace and they should be able to run with Ambrose through this one. Looks good at the moment.
Well, he's doing it right now, Greg, isn't he? The winning margin was in excess of 5 seconds, and Lowndes won't want to cop that. He will take it to Ambrose in this one, and he's doing it right now. He led early on in race 1, then it flipped around.
He's got more mid-corner speed than Marcus. It was quite evident there in the final turn. It's also a trait in the way that Craig likes to drive the car. His lines are a little different to Marcus's up the top of the circuit there.
And they're starting to create their own race here. They've broken away from Greg Murphy in 3rd. Murphy's got Kelly and Richards to deal with.
Someone's left a lot of garbage on the road at the exit of turn 1 on the previous lap.
Race over for Paul Dumbrell, yeah. Over the other side of the wall already.
We saw it earlier, guys, with Marcus after the pit stop in the first race and the adjustment, and that car came to speed. I spoke to Marcus before this race. He said tyre-wise after that first race, the balance was out with the tyres around the car. He said, look for our pit stop. We may go just down one side this time around to even up the balance. We think it's going to be the better way to go.
Ingall on Richards, goes to the outside, then cuts it back, switches back nicely. Is it enough to get Richo? It is. Oh, they contact.
Great battle, though. Gee, you don't see two cars side by side down there at turn 7 terribly often without people ending up off the road.
Scaife's in the mix here. So too is John Bow. You're talking 5, 6, 7 and 8 here. Scaife looks for an inside run on Ingall. Be nice through here, boys.
That's the message to Stephen Richards.
Pit window is about to open up.
So some people may not have ideal tyres for this first short stint, and then they'll go on to better rubber in the second part of it.
Ingall thinks about it, takes a look up the inside, and not quite close enough.
It's a great shot. It gives you an indication of the shape of the road there at 1. And Russell's made a much better exit than Stephen Richards, who's clearly battling for grip at the moment, down the inside pretty easily. Scaife goes with him.
Isn't that interesting? That's where Richards was so strong in the opening race, but now he's getting it done to him. Comes back on the inside. Scaife does give Richards room. It's where the Ambrose-Scaife incident happened, and Scaife gave him plenty of room that time.
It's probably not the best time for me to be poking my head into the Castrol Perkins garage, but I did manage to get a word with young Jack Perkins, Larry's son, who does work on the car of Paul Dumbrell. He said for some reason it suddenly dropped oil pressure and Paul shut it down before things went catastrophic.
Look at how close this is. Brilliant stuff, brilliant stuff. Just lightly rubbing Scaife and Richards.
Fantastic motor racing. It just does not get any closer or better than that.
And that's respect. That's respectful racing. And very skillful racing. John Bowers going good. Team BOC, from a poor qualifying effort from both he and Brad, boy, they've turned it around now.
That was good, wasn't it?
Oh, Stephen defence from Bow. John Bow couldn't quite respond.
Clearly on this set of tyres, Stephen's just a little bit weak at the moment, and it's making it hard for him because he's having to fight vigorously. I'm pretty certain that he's going to dive in and get that next set of tyres on as quick as he can.
He's going to take another lap. Window's open now, isn't it? Yeah, 5. We're in lap 6. So.
Yep, the leader's crossed the line for lap 5, so the compulsory pit stop window is open. I'm surprised that he didn't peel in then.
Up front, it's tight. There's less than half a second in it, but then there's a nice gap back to Greg Murphy. So it's still Lowndes hounding Ambrose. Murphy third, Todd Kelly fourth. Then Ingle, Scaife, Richards, Bow, Tander, and Paul Morris in the 10.
There's a pressure pack if ever you saw one. Have a look at it. There's just a lot of talented guys in good cars all close together. Craig Lowndes is coming in this lap, and I think Ambrose will be in too.
Did you catch up with Scaife after race 1? What was his thoughts of the...
I was standing down there when he was discussing the whole issue with Colin Bond, and wasn't a good time for a casual chit-chat with him.
Garth Tander's had a promising weekend. Been interesting to have a look at the HSV dealer team this weekend because his teammate Rick Kelly has not enjoyed Eastern Creek this time round. A circuit where he had success last year. It's not been a good one for young Rick this weekend, but Tander, it's finally turned around for him. Race leaders in.
Critical stop for both these guys because efficient pit work could make the difference here. Lowndes was able to make a net gain on Marcus, which is not uncommon in the braking area before you engage the 40k limit. Pile of them have gone in with them.
Better Electrical Camp's about halfway along. Ambrose has got to go all the way to pit end.
This is going to be a great duel. The Better Electrical team did a great job doing exactly what they did in the previous race, changing rear tyres less than 4 seconds. Brilliant stuff.
He had a lot of throttle on to try and get out though, and it was just a bit slow.
Problems with Ambrose's right rear. This is going to give Lowndes
hold it, Marcus.
position
Okay,
here.
go,
Lowndes
go, go.
goes ahead of Ambrose. Ambrose went for 2 tyres down the right-hand side.
He's got him in the pits.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about Craig there when he first launched it because it just sat there. But obviously when that right rear, I think Darryl said, snagged, that made it hard. And look at this, the two of them absolutely nose to tail. And Marcus leans on him in the second corner.
Lowndes with rears, fresh rears. Ambrose with fresh down the right-hand side. We'll see how that plays out as the race unfolds.
And this is when it's hard to drive these cars, when the rubber is mismatched. One side or one end of the car's got cold tyres and the other end's got warm. Very hard to drive them in those circumstances.
Great scrap between these two guys. And Lowndes, right from the get-go in this one, has shown to be so much more aggressive than he was in the first. He's been able to go with Ambrose. Now he leads Ambrose.
Don't for a minute think that because the brand of the car is the same that these guys are interested in letting the other one get ahead. This is about personal pride. It's about being the leader of the Ford pack. It's about 2 top teams at the peak of their game. 888's the hungry one on the charge, and Marcus and Stone Brothers do not want to relinquish the hold they've had over the business in the last couple of years.
Front guys are staying out. Murphy, Ingle, Scaife, Jason Richards, Glenn Seaton. That's the top 5 at the moment. Barguana, Owen, Baird, White and Winterbottom. That's your 10. More come into pit lane for this one and only compulsory pit stop. The FPR pilot, Greg Ritter, getting serviced. Greg?
They had some dramas on the left rear, and that's slowing Greg Ritter's stop up. 7.6 seconds or thereabouts.
Okay, mate.
Less haste, more speed for that one.
Garth Tander waiting for one of the double Cummins cars for Gary Rogers to go by, then he's released. Meanwhile, we get back to it. Paul Morris in the Sirame Commodore. He's had his compulsory pit stop back out there. Meanwhile, Greg Murphy continues to lead the race.
And he's going to pit this lap. And he has acknowledged that as we go on board with Mark Scaife on the rev limiter, 4th gear on the approach to turns 10, 11. Lowndes is consistently quicker than Ambrose in the first and last sector. Ambrose is quick in the middle sector too. So we'll watch that little seesawing battle and see how it pans out.
That looks like Murphy. I think Murphy's dived for the pits, has he?
Yeah.
So Lowndes, Ambrose, Murphy, what it's done, he has got out ahead of Todd Kelly and he is closer to those two front-running Fords.
And on this second set of tyres, I think Ambrose has got a little more strength. I don't know whether he made an adjustment in that first stop, but he just looks a bit speedier now than he did earlier. Greg Murphy's just done the quickest first sector of the race so far. He's down in 15th at the moment until the field sorts itself out. And there's the onboard shot. Craig Lowndes is in the foreground as we join Mark Scaife to take his stop now.
Russell Ingall has remained out on track and continues to lead this race. Pit stop window is open until lap 27.
Calmly hits the spot. Very efficient stop.
Watch pit exit, watch the pit exit merge line.
Where will he come back out? Look to the right of your screen. And he's got a bit of work to do. These guys are effectively the front runners. So he'll slot back in, maybe back around near his teammate Todd Kelly, perhaps a little further back.
Of course, this would tie both Marcus and Craig together on points today if they stayed in this order.
What's a ruling on that?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Is it the? I think it's the one who wins the second. Yeah. It'd be Lowndes.
I knew you were going to ask
some
it.
good ESP going on there.
Steve Ellery in trouble again.
And all of that debris on the side of the circuit is from the support
I
events.
felt a vibration halfway through turn 1.
On board with Russell Ingall.
Me please, mate. The set of tyres that are going on are much better than the ones that are on it. You should be able to pick up much more time. Just make sure you stop right on the mark. The boys will get you out.
Barry Hayes talking to Rusty, and our Darryl's on the spot down there.
As Russell heads down here, Neil, I heard Ellery go past here through one. I don't know if it was a broken front splitter in that car, but he was on the brakes and running out of black bitumen. This car now looks like they're going to do to both rears compared to Ambrose, who went for 2 down the right-hand side. Pretty good stop, a little bit slow. This is a bad stop. Bad stop for Ingall, even though he made up good time with that clear track run.
That left rear problem hurt him then. That knocked him around, so...
Hops out in front of one of the BOC Fords. So, and Russell obviously not happy with what went on in that pit stop. And he knows how much it has hurt him and how much ground he has to catch up. He's popped out in front of John Bowe, so that puts him behind Scaife and Richards and Todd Kelly. So he's dropped down the order somewhat.
That's really damaged his day, unfortunately, and it's just the pressure situation that everybody faces where these fractions of seconds or seconds really add up in these pit stops.
Yet to perform their stops, Jason Richards, Steve Owen, Jamie Whincup, Matthew White, Jason Bright, Max Wilson. So the top 7 cars still need to come in, top 6 cars rather, waiting to come in. And Craig Lowndes is essentially the leader of this race. He's been able to hold Marcus Ambrose at bay.
It's interesting, Neil, how much we see Ingall losing that pit stop, and even in the first race compared to Marcus, his stop. But we looked at those sheets during that break when we were down with the Sirame team, how much the in lap and out lap can hurt these teams. They're gaining something up to 3 or 4 seconds when you and I were looking at it.
Well, that was a good point, because when we looked at the in and out lap of Marcus Ambrose versus Paul Morris, what did we work it out to be, Darryl? It was good. It was 3.2 seconds or something like that. It's an extraordinary amount of time. And there's just no easy way of making that under normal racing conditions.
We will start the car when we finish the work.
And that's a function of making a car work well, particularly on its cold tyres on that out lap for sure.
What a start to this 2005 season. If Lowndes was to go on and win this race and thus win the round, that would make a different round winner in each of the 4 rounds this year. Zinger replay shows us what happened to Steve Ellery.
And he's right. He said he felt a vibration. We heard that on the radio, and you can see that the lower part of the front air dam, the front wing there, the splitter, has detached. That generally comes from either pounding the car over the curbing here and detaching it, or running the car too low at its front ride height and it scrapes too much. And Ambrose, his car was very oversteery then through turn 8. He's battling to hang on to the back of Lowndes right at the moment, despite looking pretty strong there a couple of laps ago.
The Ellery team working on the 88 car. They put a new front splitter on it. They're just trying to align it up at the moment with the right mounting points, and then hopefully send him out again. It's an awful lot of time for him to lose. Jason Bright has also been in to complete his stop. They changed all 4 tyres on his car. They have also put some more cross weight toward the right front on that car in between races in a bid to try and stop some of the brake lock-ups. They had to replace the airbox after the damage in that concertina entry to pit lane in race 1.
Well, Craig Lowndes is scooting away from Marcus Ambrose. This is the largest margin he's had. Remember the difference in the change of the compulsory pit stop. Lowndes put on new rears. Ambrose went for fresh tyres down the right-hand side only.
He dropped 0.8 of a second on Craig Lowndes on that lap alone. 34.1 plays a 33.3, and that's very speedy from Craig Lowndes. That's a good time this time of day.
Greg Ritter has come to a stop. He's retired out of race 2 in the Ford Performance Racing Falcon. You're looking at effectively first and second, just waiting on Whincup and Wilson to perform their stops, and we'll cycle all the way back through and be in the correct running order, approaching the halfway mark of this final race of round 4. Back in third is Murphy. Now this may allow Greg Murphy to take a shot at Marcus Ambrose. Behind him is Todd Kelly, Mark Scaife, Stephen Richards and Russell Ingall.
Max Wilson gives room for Marcus Ambrose at turn 9. There's Greg Murphy. He's not too far afield. So Ambrose can't afford to relax as we go on board the Super Cheap Auto Racing Commodore of Greg Murphy. This is turn 10. A rattle across the right ripple strip, and then rattle across the subsequent turn 11 ripple strip. Little concrete pad on the right, and then a double apex left-hander brings you back on the front straight. And one of the problems that you could see there is as the day wears on here and that sun gets a little lower in the west, it becomes a real battle to be able to get off that corner and see the road. And then also down here at turn 1, it's the same. Oh, someone's made a mistake down there.
Wilson locked up. Down into turn 1. And now Greg Murphy will discard him. Cleans that situation up and continues his pursuit of Marcus Ambrose. Though he had that little blip at Perth, well, it wasn't a little blip in his mind, but he lost a lot of championship points. Greg Murphy looks like a genuine championship contender this year. I think that's strong. It's going to take a lot to catch the Pertec Falcon and Stone Brothers pair, but Murphy has been very consistent this year.
I think it's unfolding as a fascinating championship for a range of reasons. Triple Eight clearly strong with Craig Lowndes at the moment. We know that Stone Brothers cars are very strong. Safety cars being deployed. I'm not 100% sure why.
Maybe Ritter.
Could
he seemed to be in a fairly safe position though.
There he is. We know that the Holden Racing Team cars are pretty strong. What we've not seen yet is all the guns in the one spot at the one time. We thought we were going to get that today, but it didn't quite unfold that way. But a long way from a foregone conclusion this year. That's right at the peak of the hill, exiting turn 3. The access tunnel of the paddock is underneath that. A couple of things have happened here today at turn 3, and this time it's Richo on the inside again. Remember, he and Mark went side by side a few laps earlier. This time they do make contact. Mark's out in the grey, there's no grip out there, the car gets all crossed up, and in the process he lost several spots, notably to Russell Ingall.
Now just a few laps later, Paul Morris had a very scary moment, bang, on the outside of turn 1, and that is what has caused this most recent safety car period.
Pretty heavy contact there, and as is standard practice, Paul's been taken off to the medical centre, but the right-hand side of the car is certainly going to need substantial panel work. Hopefully nothing structural there that doesn't impact too much in their preparations for China. And there is the right-hand side. So sill panel, both doors.
Neil,
obviously front right guard. Sorry, Greg.
No, you're right. The speed trace, I'm in the Morris camp here at the moment, the speed trace indicates that he exited the circuit at 270 k's. How about this, though? The contact with the wall, 140 kilometres an hour. Now, his words on the radio were, the damage is bad down the driver's side. You can see that now. This Queensland-based team has enough spares here, including a chassis, to completely reconstruct a car. They'll probably have to do that here in Sydney before sending the car off on the trip to China later in the week. Quick other bits of news around the grounds. Cam McConville, they've softened that car up all round prior to this race, hunting for rear grip. It's helped him pick up 2 positions. And a very deflated Jason Bright on the radio at the moment. Entry understeer, exit oversteer, not having a good weekend in the FPR camp. Darryl?
Lowndes obviously strong off the last turn down the front straightaway every lap, or 2 or 3 laps after that restart before the car was on the limiter into turn 1 in top gear. So very strong there. No one behind him doing the same. Obviously Ambrose, maybe they're considering the 2 tyres down the right-hand side of that car. May have been a mistake. He's losing drive off the turns. So will they make a difference?
Talking about on the limiter, a couple of fellas behind Craig Lowndes have been moaning on the radio in the interim period that Craig's been on and off the brake pedal prior to the restarts on that last one, and it's hard to read, and then it backed the pack up, and so he's obviously trying to make a break and keep the rest of them away from him, and this time we're under green once again, and Ambrose goes with him.
Look how close they are into turn 1. Dives for the inside, can't quite get him. Lowndes still leads the way. Murphy wants a shot at Ambrose. Look at Todd Kelly too. He sizes Greg Murphy up, and Murphy's awake up to it. Straight for the inside into 2.
This time Craig opted to slow the pack down a bit more on the way to the start. He's still got good pace, hasn't he, in this first cool tyre lap. Already he's taken the pressure off for himself heading down into 4.
It's a 10-lap sprint to home. Final 10 here at Eastern Creek. Can Lowndes do it? If he wins this race, he will win the round. Savage pack behind. Ingle wants a second shot at Stephen Richards. Those 2 guys were mixing it up earlier. Mark Scapes tucked in behind them. John Bowes having a spirited run in this second race. Stephen Johnson has recovered after a poor qualifying. Made up 10 spots in the earlier race. Running strong now. In the top 10 in 9th, just ahead of Garth Tander.
Scape on Ingle, 6th and 7th. John Bower behind them. Then Steve Johnson, Garth Tander, Brad Jones 11, Jason Richards, Cam McConville. Rusty talked about that car before. Bargwana, Seaton, Winterbottom, Whincup, and Rick Kelly now 18th.
You can visit the RPM website to get all the details on V8 Superstars. For those of you who live here in Sydney and the surrounds, Star City Casino tomorrow night. We'll have a lot to talk about.
I reckon you might. That's pretty standard procedure though, isn't it? There's always something going on in this business.
We'll get Scapey's thoughts on the Ambrose incident and the rest. Look forward to the guys. Steve Johnson will be on it, Paul Dumbrell, Craig Baird, and Garth Tander, as well as the regular 4, Scapey, Ingle, Brad Jones and Greg Murphy.
On the last lap, Lowndes a 33.7, a 4.2 for Ambrose, 4.3 Murphy, 4.7 for Todd Kelly, 5.4 for Stephen Richards, and so on. The rest of them are all in the 5s and 6s. So again, Lowndes just underscoring that he's got great pace in that car.
Russell Ingle is not letting Stephen Richards get away, is he? Stuck to the back of the Castrol Commodore, the team he used to drive for. And looking at every opportunity. These 2, 2nd and 3rd in the championship standings. They will fight for this position. It is worth a lot of points. And Richards is coming under increasing pressure. Ingle can't afford to make a wrong move because Scaife will pounce. He's right with him as well. Handicap back to John Bowe, Steve Johnson, Garth Tander, Brad Jones, and then Jason Richards. And Cameron McConville has made significant progress in this second race.
Brad and John in the BOC Gases cars looked pretty good after the first 2-hour practice session yesterday, and then in qualifying they just plummeted through the field. They were absolutely nowhere, and all the pep was out of Brad's step last night when I left the circuit as they tried to understand why. And obviously as the track condition changed during the day, they just didn't read it. Stephen Johnson and Glenn Seaton have had a similar weekend where they've just not been able to get a handle on the cars, but now finally in the latter part of the second race it's coming good for them. The problem with these race meetings is they don't let you off the hook if you wheel out of the truck slowly. If you jump out of the truck and your car's not too bad off the bat, you're okay, but it's no good to recover at this late stage, unfortunately.
You might notice there too on the side of Brad Jones' car, he's turned the BOC upside down. And they've got a few stickers on the car with arrows pointing up, saying this way up. Just having a little bit of fun after his 2 rollovers in the past 2 rounds. But it's the right direction right now, and he's just outside the top 10.
There it is. He's a lunatic, isn't he? He made a valid point after the incident in Perth that he's been involved in 2 of them now since the introduction of the head and neck safety device, the hands device, which in itself is a terrific thing, but it's been very difficult for him to untangle everything and get out of the car, and he's been worried about the safety aspects of that, and Jason Richards just applying a bit of pressure to him at the moment. But Dale Rogers from Revolution Race Gear has a new quick release mechanism which hopefully helps deal with that question mark over the hands device. We've actually had a lot of topics like that raised in our Zinger Hot Topic, a lot of excellent questions, folks, so we thank you for those. Only 1 winner per round, but a lot of good questions there. Try and deal with those in due course.
Let's talk about Jason Richards in the Dodo Commodore for a moment, because he had his 2nd top 10 shootout appearance of the year. Things were going well. Did have a bit of a scary moment when he spun coming on to the front straight yesterday at the beginning of his shootout lap. But things now going in the right direction for the Dodo racing team.
That'll make it on the highlights tape, won't it? When you start your shootout lap backwards. It was amazing. And really, when you have one of those odd electrical dramas in a car, it tortures everybody because they're often so hard to find. It can be the simplest thing.
Greg.
Quick mention for the Orcon racing team. Jason Bargwanna in P14 at the moment. His teammate Mark Winterbottom in 16th. Bargwanna, if you wound the clock back 12 months, was in the top 10 at this very round, and Mark Winterbottom clawed back 13 positions. For some reason, both guys tend to go well at this track. Hopefully they can pick up a few more positions now.
2nd up front. 1 second is now the lead margin, and that's the largest it's been for a while. Scaife gives Angle a bump down into the hairpin turn 9.
I spoke to Russell between the races, and he was frustrated about the fact that the 2nd set of tyres didn't have that pace that he expected them to have, but he was happy with his judgment call when Stephen Richards was steaming through the pack. And I said to him, you know, you look like a bloke who's thinking more about the championship. And he said, definitely. Here's the Zinger replay of the turn 9 touch between the 2 of them. Russell catches it.
Quick hands.
And yeah, he's on top of the job.
6 laps to go, Frank. 6 to go.
Okay.
6 to go is the call. He knows what's required. And thankfully for Lowndes, Ambrose's attention is now turned to defending that 2nd position. He knows Greg Murphy's hot on his heels.
33.6 last lap for Craig, 3.8 for Marcus, a 3.8 also for Greg Murphy, who's really keeping the pressure up on him, and a 4.4 for Todd Kelly, 4.1 for Stephen Richards, a 3.9 for Russell Ingall.
Zinger replay from a couple of laps ago. Watch the Cat Ford.
Jason Bright, David Bernard, and it's been a horror weekend for the Cat car. Qualified in the top 10, but they've just been struggling for pace in the races. And when you're down in the pack, those things happen.
Back to it, race leader. The 888 man. This will be his first victory for this new team if he can hang in there for another 5 laps. And Roland Dane, team principal. Oh, Ambrose gets it sideways. Roland Dane had a big smile on his face earlier this morning after his man started from pole for the 3rd consecutive race. He said his engineer, Campbell Little, and he have found something. They've got that perfect qualifying set up. They know how to do the 1-lap flyer. Now he's been able to convert that good qualifying into good racing.
Some of that's chemistry as well. It will have taken Campbell a little while to come to terms with what Craig needs in a car, and it'll take Craig a little while to understand what Campbell's saying. He's just giving some instruction at the moment for a small variation in the brake bias control in Craig's car. This is Greg, 3rd at the moment, and certainly still in with a shout, 33.8 this lap. Marcus the same lap time, and Craig was a 10th slower. Greg goes back through all of them, really on the limit under brakes into turn 2, and remember he's a left foot braker, doesn't use the clutch on the downshift. See the short shift, he goes 2nd, 3rd, 4th straight away. Uses the torque of the engine there at turn 3. And as it leaps off the ground over the hump, jumps up onto the rev limiter, third through turn 4. Then the roll in the camber makes the car slide down the other side. Have a listen here. It's great to listen to these cars.
Get sick of it, do you?
No, really enjoyable. What you did see there was a great indication as we look at some nastiness down there involving Glenn Seaton and Jason Bargwanna and Mark Winterbottom, so both the Orcon cars involved. And a black flag has been issued to David Bernard for his part in the Jason Bright incident. He'll have to do a drive-through, and again, it's been a pretty tough weekend for him as well. It's great to watch the top guys at work, and we're on board there with Greg Murphy following and listening for a lap. How was the sun on the way into turn 1 and on the way into turn 9? Yeah. So hard to be able to see the road and the other guy. What was notable there was how hard Greg's car was in the rev limiter in top gear going into turn 1. With 3.5 diff, that's 268 kilometres per hour, and it's out of breath down there, and that's partly aided by the hole that's being punched in the air by Marcus's car. But he's coming off the corner well out of the final turn. He's getting a good run down the straight. Pretty good efficiency in a straight line for that car.
Early on in that ride with Murphy, I could see through the screen that Ambrose getting quite loose under braking. So whether he's running into tyre trouble, setup trouble late in this race, it's understandable. And he went with that different strategy of just putting the fresh tyres down the right-hand side. This battle still rages. Richards versus Ingle. Greg.
Paul Morris has made the difficult trip back to the garage. Firstly, how are you?
Yeah, no worries, Rusty. Bit of hurt pride, that's about it.
What about the assessment on the car quickly? What's the damage like?
Yeah, I think the tyre wall down there saved me, so a bit of panel damage, hopefully.
You'll be right for China, Paul.
Yeah, we'll be right. We've got a spare car here with us to take to Melbourne and put on the plane if we need to anyway, so we're in good shape.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see that he is okay after such a scary ride. And we're in the closing 3 laps here at Eastern Creek. The orders Lowndes to the tune of 1.9 seconds he has over Ambrose. Murphy third. Ingle forcing the issue. Gives Stephen Richards a bit of a tap. Tries to unsettle him.
He kept it going for a while there too, just to let him know that he was there. And Stephen's car's just a bit weak in the middle of the corner, and Russell's got some pace. And when the cars are so evenly matched, even if you've got a little bit, there's not much you can do if there's 1.5 tonnes in the way. And so the seasoned campaigners like to rattle away on your bumper a little bit just to see if they can break your rhythm, make you angry, force you into a mistake, and then whack, they get you.
Rub your hands together. This is the Russell of old. Forget that conservative stuff, Russell. Let's get stuck into it.
He doesn't play a white knight well, does he?
I said to him, he said to me on the telephone after at Perth, I said, conservative and Ingle aren't 2 words you usually hear in the same sentence. And he goes, oh, thanks, mate. And I said, I was only telling the truth.
He's got a little bit of extra pace here. Whether he can use it's another question. Mid-corner pace of the car's not bad in a couple of spots, but clearly Stephen's got some edge in a few other locations around the track as well. Looking further afield, 8th Bow, 9th Steve Johnson, 10th this man Garth Tander. Right behind him is Brad Jones, Jason Richards, Cam McConville. There they are. Not a lot happening in this little battle here at the moment. They're all line astern. McConville.
There will be some extra frustration. You just mentioned Tander there for his teammate Rick Kelly, who has basically been invisible this weekend. He has clawed his way back up to 14th, but for the guy who won here at one of the rounds last year, it's been a tough weekend for Rick Kelly. Ingle again, same spot, exiting turn 2. Not quite close enough on Stephen Richards. Final 2 laps.
And if you do have a little bit of mid-corner understeer, or you're a bit slow in that part of the track, even if it's oversteer, sort of doesn't really matter. It looks worse than it is. You know that it's almost impossible for anybody to get around you there. And often, from a strategic standpoint, it's better to be a little bit slow in the middle of the corner because it helps ruin the rhythm of the guy behind you. And we saw that done effectively at the San Marino Grand Prix by Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher. And we've got Formula One coming your way tonight on Network 10. We'll talk more about that grid later in the program, but it's an interesting one with Nick Heidfeld on pole, Williams BMW, Mark Webber is in third position, between them Kimi Raikkonen.
As the battle goes on for second, our race leader is enjoying a 2-second lead over this guy, Marcus Ambrose, and Greg Murphy is not done with yet. Murphy knows he has a chance here, but he has to do it in the next lap.
Lowndes asking if this is the last lap. And it looks like he's home, bar the shouting. 2 seconds exactly is the margin between Craig Lowndes and Marcus Ambrose. 34.3 for Craig, 34.5 for Marcus. Unresolved brawl here though. 34.4 for Murphy, he's keeping the pressure on. 4.9 for Kelly. Then Stevie Richards, Russell Ingall, Mark Scaven, more trouble. Big trouble here at the hairpin. Bright is one of them.
One of the Orcon
Alex
cars.
Davison is the other. I didn't see which of the Larkham Motorsport Orcon entries it was. What a day of drama for Ford Performance Racing. Andrew Jones is in it as well, car 34. Huge damage on the front of the Orcon car, whichever one that was, either Bargwanna or Winterbottom.
What a day though for Triple Eight, the better electrical team. Roland Dane and his men and his #1 pilot, Craig Lowndes. We said a few moments ago, it's been 2 years. Phillip Island 2003, the last time Lowndes stood on top.
And with half a lap to go, they're locked on 189 points apiece for the round, and the winner of the second of the 2 races will win the round. So that should go to Craig Lowndes with only 3 more corners standing in his way from that outcome.
It's going to be difficult for Greg Murphy to snatch second away here from Marcus Ambrose, but he won't give up. But it's all about this guy today. 3 consecutive poles, Pukekohe, Barbagallo, and here at Eastern Creek. And now Craig Lowndes has his first race and round win in 2 years. Murphy still wants to grab second. It'll be tough, but it is Craig Lowndes Day. Eastern Creek is his, and Lowndes is back. Terrific win, and understandably, Triple Eight Racing celebrate.
Go turn that oil pump off too, please. Turn the oil pump off.
That fight went all the way to the line between Stevie Richards and Russell Ingall for 5th spot. Richards won that fight, but this guy wins the day.
Craig said to Campbell, we should do this more often. And he's been working away at it for years, hasn't he? Very proud Triple Eight race engineering team. Lowndes back in the victor's circle. He drove fantastically all weekend. And
Hey,
he
mate, when you come back round, you've got to go onto the front straight, stay on the front
answered the question in terms of consistency, because the issue there was going to be, okay, we know it was a good qualifying car, how well would it race? Well, he raced it perfectly and the car was very, very good.
And the boys are thrilled. The team is thrilled, and you can understand it. And what a way to celebrate for the Lowndes family. Natalie, Craig's wife, gave birth to their second child, Chili, a short time ago. And, well, perfect way to celebrate.
Well done, Craig. Yeah,
It sounded like Roland Dane getting on the radio. Zinger replay to tell us what happened in turn 9.
So contact between Steve-O and Jason Bright, and then everybody else just tripped over it. Now, the interesting thing there is that Brighty's just run into one of his own cars.
Yes, he has. The Brytech Fujitsu Ford.
And you know, the interesting point in that, regardless of who may be right or wrong, and I haven't had enough of a look at it to fully understand it, but that will happen sometimes where you think that because you can have a relationship with another driver or another team, that they will necessarily give you something that you may want. I've seen that sort of thing happen before.
Celebrations at Triple Eight. Greg's there.
Yeah, and it's tremendous too, Lee. The cheers went up just a moment ago, and Roland Dane's he's a pretty serious guy when it comes to motor racing. We don't see you shed a tear too often. You were close to that with Craig coming across the line. Well done.
Really good. It's the end of the beginning. Really happy.
Tell me about how you felt. Craig was on the radio on a number of occasions in those closing laps. What was the tension like?
Unbelievable. I mean, we were so tense in there, but I'm really glad that we were able to beat Marcus out on the track, that he didn't get pinged in the first race or anything, and we could have a real ding-dong and come out on top.
Did you think that it would, when you first arrived in Australia and, you know, formed this team, did you think it would take this amount of time to win a round? Was your goal to do it sooner than now?
No, I thought that we should be winning races this year, and we are.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well, Ross, not a victory this weekend, but a victory for the engine shop.
Yeah, good job from the guys in the engine shop. You know, in the first race today, Marcus's car was obviously stronger, and we made a small change, and they've obviously made a change, and it's just that close, you know. You go a little bit the wrong way, they go the right way, and that's how it's washed up. But good points haul, you know, we're happy with that.
Ross, in that race, you went tyres down the right-hand side for Marcus, not on the rear. Think that was maybe a bad decision?
Oh, I don't know. We'll sit down and analyse that. It's hard to call at this stage whether that hurt us or not.
Thanks, Ross.
Yeah, no problems.
So the engines that man and his employees build powered Craig Lowndes and Triple Eight to victory as we take a look at the VB scoreboard. Lowndes' first win in 2 years ahead of the reigning champion, and Greg Murphy, what a solid weekend for the Kiwi. Todd Kelly was quiet, but he was there, wasn't he? Good fourth place ahead of Stephen Richards and Russell Ingall. Scaife solid in 7th, and John Bow will be pleased to be in the top 10 here at Eastern Creek, and so too Stephen Johnson, considering where he started, and Garth Tander rounding out the 10 in his HSV dealer team Commodore. Cameron McConville, after starting the weekend 20th, worked his way forward to 13th. Some relief there, and so too Jason Richards, just outside the top 10. Then we get back into the guys who endured somewhat of a frustrating weekend. Steve Ellery, after top 10ing in race 1, had a variety of issues in a second, and that's why he's all the way back in 29th. And Paul Morris escaping that very scary looking crash, but he's okay. The boys will have extra work to do.